Good evening. Welcome to Peacock Alley, where we're broadcasting live the legislature today. We have a guest, the North Dakota Soybean Growers Association. Let me try that again.
The North Dakota Soybean Growers Association.
Thank you, Dale. That was perfect. I didn't get that right. I wrote it down and looked at it and still didn't read it. My wife tells me I don't read very well, so maybe I'm dyslexic. But anyway, so tonight we are broadcasting live from Peacock Alley. And tonight, as we broadcast from here, tonight is a special night at Peacock Alley where they have political wing night. And they have left wings and right wings. And so I had some earlier tonight. I had a couple sets of 10.
You still have some left, I see.
Well, that's the remainder of 18. So, you know, It's probably not a good thing. The other 10 are down at I left at the bar, actually.
So when we start, are you going to finish those off?
I'll probably have another 10 before I go. So you can get 10 for $5. So for $10, I ate 18 wings, and I had salt and vinegar. I had barbecue, and I also had just a regular buffalo spicy. They're quite good. So if you're out doing anything tonight, stop on down to Peacock Alley and come have some wings.
I was gazing at the list of sauces, and it said salt and vinegar, garlic and Parmesan, Thai peanut, and teriyaki. And I was wondering, okay, if a right wing has no skin and the left wing is breaded, so what sort of political significance can we attach to the sauce? I mean, is salt and vinegar, is that a bipartisan sauce?
I think that would be. I think that'd be a good bipartisan.
And how about garlic and Parmesan?
Yeah, I think that definitely would be. I'd be on the garlic side there, right?
Is Thai peanut, that strikes me as a fairly liberal sauce.
I would be with you on that one.
Thai and peanut. Interesting. And teriyaki, is that right wing or left wing?
Left wing.
Why?
Asian. Their governments tend to be lefties.
Oh, really? We'll tell that to the government of Singapore. I mean,
but Dale, what makes them different between what he calls left wings and right wings is the breading. And the right wing, you order them naked, and that means no breading. So I'm not sure if that means less is better, which tends to be conservative.
I would think that breaded wings would be conservative.
That's where you're wrong.
Well,
go talk to Dale Zimmerman, the owner of this fine establishment, the historic Peacock Alley.
Yeah, the historic Peacock Alley in downtown Bismarck, North Dakota. A little slice of heaven.
Now, tonight we have the North Dakota Soybean Growers Association with us. How was that?
You did that flawlessly.
Okay, it took a couple times. But anyway, so you got some special guests with us tonight, and they're our host sponsors this evening. We appreciate their support. And, Scott, thank you for your group sponsoring this evening. I understand you got some really important guests with your our segment we're going to be doing. So, Dale, I'll turn it over to you, and you're going to talk a little bit about what happened in the legislature today, and then let's talk to our guests.
First of all, so people don't get, incredibly curious about who you're talking about, he was referring to Mr. Scott Rising, who's the legislative director of the North Dakota Soybean Growers Association, and we have also as our guests Mr. Craig Olson of Colfax, he's a board member, and Mr. Jason Mewes of Colgate, who is the president of the North Dakota Soybean Growers Association. Now, you mentioned, okay, what went on in the legislature today? Well, I've got like 2 pages of stuff, and I'll try to summarize it and boil it down very, very quickly. And I'm not going to drone on and on like I usually do.
Okay, I'm going to time you. I got 3 minutes. Go.
Okay, first of all, there's a bill to put a 1-cent assessment on each pound of grapes sold. It's a way to set up a promotional fund for the wine business. Like, you have an assessment for soybeans, for wheat, for corn, for all sorts of commodities. Now we're going to have one for wine grapes in North Dakota. This is very interesting.
I might start raising some grapes. I like that.
Yeah,
I like wine.
We had a bill, $12 million to relocate the Missouri River Correctional Center from where it is right now, which is on the banks of the Missouri River in southwest Bismarck, to very close to the state penitentiary grounds, which is in southeast Bismarck, and the Corrections Director, the North Dakota Corrections Director, I'm catching your disease here, Gary. She doesn't like this idea because she doesn't think a minimum security facility belongs next to a maximum security facility, and so that will be an interesting little tussle. We had a hearing today about an annual sessions bill. There's been a long-standing debate about whether the North Dakota legislature should meet every year. Usually the legislature meets in odd-numbered years for as long as 80 days. This time, this bill would split the 80 days up into a 45-day session and a 35-day session, with the 45-day session coming in the odd-numbered years and the 35-day session in the even-numbered years. And some people who have normally opposed or in the past have opposed annual sessions are supporting this bill, so we'll see what kind of legs it has. And if it passes in the House, then Katie, bar the door, because the Senate, I think, would be more amenable to this kind of idea.
Well, that'd be great for promoting our radio show, so we could do it every year rather than every other year.
Yeah,
so
I'm sure. That's really why
we should go testify.
Yeah, we should. Yeah, that's we're a couple of self-serving people, so we'll just go. By golly, why don't you make it good for our radio show? Let's meet every year.
I like that.
The hell with the taxpayers. Huh? Okay.
How about every 4 years? That'd be 40 days every 4 years.
What the suggestion I've always heard, instead of 2 days or 80 days every 2 years, it should be 2 days every 80 years. One of the really interesting things, too, is a bill that would impose a $500 fine for not covering a load of sand and gravel if you're hauling it for hire. Now, this will be very popular, I think, among anyone who's had a windshield cracked by gravel, but it would also cause some major headaches out in western North Dakota, where they hauling around sand and gravel all the time, and it's not restricted to western North Dakota either. And we have another bill that assesses speeding fines for out-of-state vehicles, and the same rate that vehicle would have been fined if the speeding offense had occurred in the person's home state. Because in North Dakota we have notoriously cheap, and thankfully, from my point of view, cheap speeding fines, because I got a speeding ticket last week and it cost me all of $12. The idea here is that there's too many. The sponsor's name is Bob Scarpel, and he is from Tioga in northwestern North Dakota. And his idea is that there's too many people driving around in western North Dakota particularly who have not bothered to register their cars in North Dakota, their cars and trucks. And when you register your car or truck in North Dakota, you're paying money into the highway fund and supporting road repairs and just keeping up with the infrastructure. And there's all these folks driving around, this is his theory, with out-of-state plates. And so if we say, okay, you can drive with your out-of-state plates, but if we nail you for speeding, we're going to fine you the same amount you'd be fined back in your home state instead of the wonderfully cheap speeding fines that we have in North Dakota. And so maybe that's an incentive to get your car registered.
Do you think that would stand up constitutionally?
I don't see why not.
Okay, just curious.
I mean, of course, I'm a constitutional lawyer. I know all of these things.
We'll have the Attorney General on tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh, we're not on the air. Darn.
That's true. but my favorite of all time, and I'd like to hear your gentlemen, everyone's at this table, I'd like to hear, I have no idea why this bill was introduced, and I'd like to hear your opinions on it. There is a bill in Senate Transportation. It's Senate Bill 2191. It says a vehicle's taillights may not be lower than 15 inches off the ground or higher than 6 feet off the ground, 72 inches. So what is the rationale for saying, well, I can visualize the rationale, but you don't have your tail lights higher than 72 inches, but I'm thinking, why not 50 inches? Because I'm trying to think about a vehicle that has tail lights that are 6 feet off the ground. I mean, you probably could see one at the monster truck rally, but I'm trying to figure out what the logic here is.
I suppose
what do you think?
I think the 15 inches probably have to do when the snow's at about 20. No, I'm kidding. But I
mean, we don't have too many low riders in North Dakota. I mean, you can't low ride when the snow is 2 feet high.
Does it tie into farm equipment at all? Do you think? Do you think that's an issue, gentlemen? You guys?
I mean, I just thought it's a monster truck. I mean, you're people driving monster trucks on the road.
6 feet is a long ways.
Yes.
It must be visibility reasons, I imagine, when it's foggy or wintertime. That's the only thing I can think of, so you could be at level with them.
It will affect farm equipment quite a bit. When you think of where the tail lights are on a combine, they're well up above my head. They're probably 8 feet up. Grain cart would be the same way. Tractors maybe not so much. They're a little lower, but it would come into play on farm equipment.
I think we have our answer right here.
Yep.
It's interesting.
Well, kind of almost like that smoking thing we talked about last week. They never thought about all the signs and never took into account some of these small business guys. And so have a combine with 8 feet off the ground, you got a problem with that. It'd be very difficult.
Yeah, what Gary's referring to is there's the new anti-smoking law that was approved by the voters last November. It's having some interesting implications for businesses because you need to put a no smoking sign beside every entrance, and entrance have been described or defined as garage doors and loading bay docks, and places where you do not normally think of. You don't normally walk up to a building and think, oh, that garage door, that's where I go in.
Or delivery vehicles.
Yes,
all kinds of crazy things.
Yeah, and you also if you have a hired man on your farm, and the vehicle that person uses on your farm becomes a place of employment, and so you have to put a little sign in your truck that says no smoking in this truck, and it doesn't matter if you don't allow smoking anyway, or the person doesn't even smoke, or maybe only one person uses the truck. You have to have this little sticker on there, and that's problematic for a lot of folks. I mean, this requirement alone has caused the state fleet to order 5,000 stickers because they have 3,800, I think, or 36 or 3,800 vehicles, and plus they have other machines that need to have these stickers on them, and
wow, waste of tax dollars.
And plus, Delta Airlines, when they land in North Dakota, they got to have a sticker on the door. No smoking by this plane.
Wow.
No, it's a little bit like your sand and gravel deal.
Yes.
During the testimony there this morning, I remember hearing something about this would cost the state to cover their own trucks.
Yes.
Something like $1.2 million, and it was suggested that maybe the state wouldn't have to follow their own law.
Oh, that's
what we want.
That's how it works. I think Washington's good at that. But
yeah.
Okay, Dale, go ahead. You got these. Go ahead,
gentlemen. I guess the first question is, how is the soybean business in North Dakota? How is it to be a soybean grower these days?
It's good right now. Our industry's growing every year. Acres are up. Last year we had good yields, so the production is up. Things are good for North Dakota soybeans.
Territory is also expanding a lot. Beans are going west. They used to be in the southeast part of the state, and they've really come west. From the east, so that's why I can say that. And they've moved north a lot too. They're all the way up the Canadian border, and a lot of people have a lot of success with them.
That was another one of my questions. Where do people grow soybeans in North Dakota, and how has the soybean growing territory changed over, say, the last 10 years?
I would say the soybeans are growing all the way out to Bismarck, up through Minot, and everywhere east from there. That's kind of the prime area. I don't know how much they grow them on the west side of the Missouri, but I'm sure there's some there. But, 10 years ago, my area in Steele County wasn't really a soybean growing area. It was still south and east of there yet, and I consider myself to be kind of in the southern, eastern part of the state. It's really expanded.
I'm Richland County, which is southeast, and we've had soybeans for a long time. As long as I've been around, we've had soybeans, so it's always been there for our county. So it's interesting to see all these people that have never raised them before in other parts of the state and talk to them, and they're having success with them, and they're doing well.
What caused people to start growing them where they haven't been grown before?
What happened in my area was we were growing wheat, barley, and sunflowers, and we had a terrible time with disease and sunflowers, a terrible time with blackbirds, and we just got fed up with it. You'd get a nice crop, get to harvest, and half of it's on the ground due to the birds or the head rot, and we had enough. Started trying soybeans, and we've had good yields with them, and they're an easy crop to grow.
Do blackbirds not like soybeans?
They do not.
Well,
the geese love them, though.
Okay.
The geese love them.
What do you do about that?
Depends on who you ask.
Well, I don't want you divulging any trade secrets here.
There's not really a lot you can do if you have a goose problem in your field. They can come in off a waterway, and they'll do a lot of damage in a short time.
Mm-hmm. I mean, how do you try to deal with it? Do you try to scare them, or what options are open to you?
Not a lot, really. Not a lot.
They take over their areas, and
Dale, there's been a continuing research effort done within the soybean community to change or deal with different varieties. But if you go up around the Devil's Lake area, what I hear up there, the biggest reason that they are able to grow soybeans is they have rock packers. They can push the rocks back down the ground so they don't pick them up with a combine on their way by.
Oh, my goodness. My goodness. What is it that soybeans are used for primarily?
I would say the primary use of them would be animal feed and oil. A lot of soybean oil gets processed.
What's the soybean oil used for?
Oh, it's used to make All sorts of things. It's used for cooking. It's used to make products like John Deere combines have some plastic made from soy oil. Ford Mustang seats have soy oil in them. It's used for all sorts of industrial purposes, I guess.
How significant is that? I guess I'd call it the non-food market. I mean, making plastics from soybeans or ink. How significant is that as a market?
I would say it's the market. The food grade industry in the state is robust, but other states don't have quite as much of that. So most of the soybeans go into industrial uses or animal feed. In our state, it's probably only 5 to 10% actually is used for human consumption.
What would you like to see done in the soybean industry that isn't available to you now? For example, is there a lot of processing capacity for soybeans in North Dakota?
What I would really like to see is a biodiesel plant go into North Dakota. But the problem we have with that is the animal agriculture industry in the state isn't as strong as it is other places. Where to have a successful biodiesel plant, you really need to have animals that you can feed the soy meal to in a relatively close distance. And that's been the biggest drawback for us, is to scale up a plant to process biodiesel and then have enough animals there to use the meal. It's been very difficult.
What's the advantage of using biodiesel?
I don't know if I'm the biodiesel expert.
Do you use it yourself?
Yes, if we can.
Okay.
Not every opportunity can, but we try to.
Is it tough to get?
It can be. If, let's say, I'm just driving to town, you got to look for certain gas stations or fuel stations that have it. Not everybody carries it. There's a select few. And as of ag, our fuel supplier for our ag equipment, that's pretty standard to have it. So it's getting better, but a lot of the ag communities are trying to push it, and ag groups are trying to push it. Similar to ethanol, I'd say. It's there, but you just got to know where it's at.
To add to what Craig said, biodiesel is much easier to get if you have your own on-farm storage tank. Mm-hmm. You can get it in a tanker from your supplier much easier than you can find a filling station in town that has it. A lot of filling stations have been scared of it, to be honest with you, because they're afraid of the gelling issues. And there's people out there that just won't use it because they're scared of it.
When biodiesel first came into existence, there was a lot of product used in it that caused it to gel when it cooled off. And if you've changed filters and stuff on a tractor or a pickup at hundreds of dollars at a whack, or tried to get this out of a storage tank after it looks more like jelly, that memory lasts quite a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine. What sort of legislative issues are you gentlemen interested in? Are there many legislative issues during the legislature in North Dakota this year that are of interest to soybean growers in particular?
One of the key things that we're working on, Dale, is the research and extension budget process and rural infrastructure. We've been focused on, now this is our second session, is that being one of the critical things that we're advocating for, the rebuilding or reconstructing of our rural infrastructure. I think it's pretty well accepted across the state that the infrastructure of our grandfathers simply won't do the job of our sons and grandsons, so it's time to do that. We have an opportunity to fix the roof while the sun's shining, so to speak. So,
is the soybean crop in North Dakota used in North Dakota, or is it exported?
About 97% is exported out of the state, mostly domestically for processing, but we're also the closest market for the Asian countries because we export out of the Pacific Northwest.
What sort of soybeans do Asian customers like? You have to take me to Soybean 101 here because I'm not that familiar with varieties of soybeans.
What they typically like are the food grade soybeans, and those are typically non-GMO, and they're natto, they call them, or nano natto. They're a little bit of a smaller bean than a regular soybean, but there's health benefits to the smaller beans over the regular soybeans.
And what are those?
I think Scott might have to answer that.
What are the health benefits of smaller soybeans?
They contain, I think, a little bit higher protein level. The amino acid structure is just slightly different than the meal grade, if you would, and they're a preferred food for tofu or source for tofu and things like that.
I was going to mention that when you go to the store, what you see specifically that's made of soybeans, you see soy milk and you see tofu, and how much of our production goes into items like that? Is it a fairly small market, or
it would be a fairly small market of our beans?
I don't know a percentage, but yeah, it's a small market, but it's a niche market that farmers can do very well with if they do well.
I kind of hate to put you on the spot, but do you drink soy milk? Do you like it?
I do not, but I've got 2 little boys that had milk allergies as they were infants, and they grew up on soy formula. So it's been a lifesaver for my 2 little boys.
I don't know if I've ever tried it.
I keep meaning to try it every time I cruise past the milk aisle, but I've never done it. And it's but it's interesting because in Japan, I've never been to Japan, but I've heard this. And so people tell me this. They have different.
It's on Google.
They have, yes, of course. They have different flavors, and apparently there's lots of different types of soy milk that you can buy, different flavors of milk, and it sounds very, very exotic, actually. We're speaking this evening to Mr. Scott Rising. He's just the gentleman I just cut off. He's the legislative director for the North Dakota Soybean Growers Association. And we have Mr. Jason Mewes of Colgate. He is the president of the North Dakota Soybean Growers Association. And we also have Mr. Craig Olson of Colfax, who's a member of the board of the association.
This is Gary Emeneth. We are broadcasting live from Peacock Alley, Legislature today. Stay with us after the break. We look forward to talking further on these very important issues. Welcome back to Peacock Alley, where we're broadcasting live. You're listening to Legislature Today. This hour is sponsored by the North Dakota Soybean Growers Association. And at the break, we had to do a little check-in because tonight's political wing night, and I had quite a few wings earlier. We talked about it earlier. We're trying to figure out if soy oil.
I can't believe that you ate so many wings.
I know. You should see me eat raw oysters. I like to shuck oysters. I eat a lot more of those. But I pay for it. But I find out the soy oil is not used in the wings, but they do have soy sauce, and they use the soy sauce in the teriyaki wings. So there you have it, my soy story for the night, Dale.
And you as I recall, you asked the owner of this marvelous restaurant, Dale Zimmerman, you said, okay, are soybeans used in soy sauce?
That's right.
And I thought, well, who's buried in Grant's tomb?
Well, sometimes
it's true, though. I mean, it's a good question. It really is.
I didn't want to assume something and be an idiot for making a wrong assumption.
You're absolutely correct.
My wife can tell you that I'm regularly doing that, putting my foot in my mouth. So.
Oh, that's all right. This doesn't count as one of those.
Okay.
But I just thought it was a great question. Gentlemen, we're speaking this evening with Mr. Jason Mewes, the president of the North Dakota Soybean Growers Association. I almost said corn bean. In fact, I just did say corn bean. Mr. Craig Olson of Colfax, who is a board member of the North Dakota Soybean Growers Association, and Mr. Scott Rising, who's the legislative director of, you guessed it, the North Dakota Soybean Growers Association. And gentlemen, what does the Soybean Growers Association do? What is its reason for being?
Our reason for being is to protect and represent the interests politically of the soybean growers in the state. The Soybean Council exists to handle the checkoff dollar. They are in charge of marketing, production issues, education of growers and the public. What we do is the public policy side of the soybean industry.
And when you say checkoff dollars, can you explain what that means, please?
For every dollar of soybeans sold, half a penny goes to the checkoff.
And what's the checkoff spent on?
It is the research, promotion, domestic and international marketing, and education.
How much do you raise with a half a cent checkoff?
Oh, that's a good question. There's 160 million bushels of soybeans produced, so that would be, using today's prices, about a $2.2 billion revenue, so 0.5% of that.
Okay. And you mentioned the political desires of the soybean growers. What are they?
Well, basically, it is to assist the future of the soybean industry, in that through investments in research that benefits all through the checkoff system. For example, in the last half a dozen years, just within the state of North Dakota, there's been over $1 million a year average of these checkoff funds. To supplement that, because they're federal fund process, there's some things we can't buy, and we have to go to the legislature and ask for additional or support requests for additional research monies that benefit all of ag and so forth. And it's the road infrastructure and all of that, but primarily it is to advance the interests of all of agriculture, not just soybeans.
How many soybean growers are there in North Dakota?
There's roughly 6,000 soybean growers in the state.
Where do you have any idea where we rank in terms of production amongst the states? Is North Dakota a big soybean growing state, or is it kind of in the middle of the pack? Or
I would guess we're in the middle of the pack right now, but growing every year.
Okay. And Mr. Olson, I believe you mentioned earlier that soybeans are easy to grow. One of you gentlemen said that. What makes them easy to grow?
Well, they can be easy to grow. It depends on the year, too. But
Yeah.
less input costs. Seems like they adapt better in different soil conditions. Easier to plant into. Harvest is sometimes easier, I think. I don't know. They're easy. I deal with them every day, and I don't know how
you mentioned less input costs. What does that mean?
Low fertilizer inputs. Usually the seed costs less than like corn. Less fuel. We're going over the field less. It seems like with soybeans, it less passes with.
Do you have the kind of seed variety that you would like?
Yeah, but you could always have more. But yes, they've the breeding companies and the technology and research that's been put in over the years have really developed the whole North Dakota as a state to develop a good soybean and grow good soybeans.
Mr. Olson, tell me about your operation. Just tell me where you are in relationship to Colfax, your place, and how many acres. How long have you been at this?
Well, I'm almost 30 now, so I'm just a young pup. But
Well, you sure are.
I've pretty much farmed my whole
You
life.
would pass for 18, I can tell you.
I have farmed since I could crawl up the tractor cab with my dad. Family farm, my brother and my dad and myself, and we're diversified crop / livestock operation. Year-round busy, doing different stuff, and enjoy every minute of it.
So you grew up on the farm that you're working?
Correct. Yep.
And
yep.
Where'd you go to high school?
A little town in Colfax. There's a Richland 44. I graduated there, and no problem. I went to NDSU for 4 years, and
what's your degree in at NDSU?
It was actually general agriculture, it's a kind of a cross between several ag majors like economics and business, and like a cropping science, which is plants and weeds and chemicals. And
how do you put that to work as a farmer?
My major that I took was the best because I picked the classes I wanted to take so I could take home and use my management skills and use some of my crop classes I used to learn how to help my production out and manage weeds and manage soils. And
what's the soil like where you are? Is it pretty good soil?
Yes, we're actually we farm a lot of sand. You get farther east towards Red River, they call it gumbo or Fargo clay. It can be interesting to work with, but our soils, I enjoy working with it. It's forgiving and it produces good crops. And
is it particularly suited to soybean growth?
Yes. Ask me that one again. Sorry.
The soil that you work, is it particularly suited to growing soybeans?
Yes. We actually raise 4 different crops, and we don't have a problem with any crop. But yeah, soybeans on a good year they'll do very well.
When you harvest your crop, do you feed it to your livestock, or do you sell it, or what do you do with it?
We sell all of our soybeans. Some of our corn is fed to our livestock, but most of our crop is sold to the local elevator.
Do you grow GMO beans?
We have in the past.
What's the advantage to that?
Premiums. You get they pay you more because it's harder to get a GMO crop. It's more challenging. Chemicals used to spray it's more timely, and it's harder to control some weeds with the old chemicals that we've had for many years. So they pay you more to work harder at it, I think.
Why are GMO beans worth more?
Other countries, GMO or not?
GMO. You were talking about non-GMO.
Sorry,
I'm
yes.
sorry.
I misunderstood.
It's okay. You were talking about non-GMO beans. You essentially have to work harder because weed control is more difficult. But can you tell me why non-GMO beans are worth more? Why they sell for higher prices?
Because there's people all over the world that's what they want, and it's getting less and less for them to get it. But they don't realize that technologies that we have with our crops now, that we can produce more food. So, but these countries, they want non-GMO products, so they'll pay more for it.
Okay. Mr. Mewes, what about your place? How long have you been a farmer?
Kind of like Craig, more or less my whole life. Been out of high school and college now for about 12 years, 11 years, somewhere in there, and I've always wanted to farm.
Where did you go to college?
I went to NDSU just like Craig did. I graduated in Ag Econ.
And how do you put that education to work in your operation?
With the various courses you take throughout there, it kind of gives you just a general background of, some crop and weed science, soil science, a lot of economic and finance stuff, and all those fit perfectly with what a farmer does day in and day out.
I mean, I imagine that when you went to college, you already had quite a lot of experience as a farmer. How did college add to your knowledge as a farmer? What did it give you that you didn't have before?
One of the main tools there's two things that I really took from college. One of them was the networking with other farmers. I've learned more about farming from talking to guys like Craig than you could ever learn in college or ever learn on your own. When you learn how to touch base with your friends and neighbors and colleagues, that's where you really learn a lot. The other thing college taught me was how to go find information if you needed it. There's a lot of, the internet was kind of just getting started as I entered college. And they taught us a lot how to use the internet, where to go, who to talk to, those types of things to get information.
Does the Soybean Growers Association help you along those lines, too, in terms of getting information and networking?
It really does. We put a magazine together that has articles in there from NDSU researchers that tie directly to production agriculture. Like I said earlier, networking with other farmers that have tried different things and had good luck with them, or they've tried something that didn't work. You learn that way. When
you talk to other soybean growers about soybean production, like particular problems you're having or whatever, what is it that you talk about?
One of the main things you talk about is different fertility practices you've tried. Do you fertilize your soybeans? Do you not? Do you use X brand chemical or Y brand chemical?
Is it fairly common to fertilize your soybeans?
Yes and no. A lot of people do fertilizer prior, so they have fertile ground, they don't do it. Some people, as my farm, we usually fertilize our soybeans, but then we have the fertility still in our soil and we're done with our soybeans to help with the next crop. So it does pay. I think it does help on a real good year. I think it helps a lot.
Mr. Mewes, do you? When I was talking to Mr. Olson, he talked about his diversified operation. Do you have a diversified operation as well?
We're maybe not quite as diversified as Craig because we don't have any livestock, but we grow soybeans, corn, and then 3 types of dry edible beans.
Which types?
Navy beans, black beans, and pinto beans.
And what's the market for dry edible beans these days?
It's anywhere from 30 to 35 cents per pound.
Is that considered good?
Historically, it would be considered a fantastic price, but for the current times, it's really not high enough to get anybody to switch into dry beans.
Do you think that soybeans are given enough of a priority in research at NDSU?
It's a good question.
Well,
the Soybean Council, with their checkoff funds, they do a fantastic job of handling production-related research and new use-related research. What we've always thought in the past is that the state could have done a better job in supporting the soybean breeding program at NDSU. where some of the smaller crops would have 2 technicians. Soybeans has 1. And soybeans each year are getting to be more and more a leader in the state.
We're exceptionally appreciative of the new greenhouse facility and some of those opportunities that we don't have anywhere else in the country, to be honest with you. In addition to that, one of those challenges is some of those things with federal money you can't, it's prevented from use by law, so we have to come to the state, and the state's been very gracious for us. Yeah.
How does the greenhouse help the soybean industry?
It really helps all of agriculture from the standpoint that it gives us an opportunity at world-class researchers, whether it be in the soybean world or corn or, I mean, you can pick the crop.
What's the nature of research into soybeans these days? Is it to increase the yield? Is it to change the amino acid makeup, or the nutritional qualities of a soybean? Or
yeah,
I think you hit them all.
I think every one
probably
of those.
keep on going too.
Okay.
Part of it is we have the capability. I'm told today in a chemical engineering format that you can literally take it apart, the molecules, and reassemble them. It is that versatile. So the idea that you can put in specific traits, I think, is for a lot of the research exactly what they're up to, so that you can use it, this particular trait for that, this particular trait for that.
What do you gentlemen see as the future of soybean production, and what are they going to be used for? Is it going to stay fairly much the same, or do you see them being used as an industrial product rather than as a feed, or what's your vision there?
I think we'll always feed a lot of soybeans. We'll always use it for that. But I think there's a lot of potential in the new uses. With some of the research that's being done at NDSU, they're really focusing on how to use that soybean oil and soy proteins and those types of things. One of the researchers is working on a shampoo that's soy-based. And it's just limitless what they can come up with. They're making paint with it. Like as I said, the shampoo. They've got all sorts of what would you call them? Building materials. They're working on using soybean oil for. It's just an endless list.
I think the food side of it, as human consumption, probably going to go as countries develop. You'll see less and less because they'll eat more steak, more protein. At that part I see less, but as the technology, like Jason said, that I think that's endless, what it's going to be used for and what it's already used for and you don't know.
An incredible amount of that also, the research focuses on uses for the oil, for example, the seats, that kind of thing. We're still left with the issue of the soybean meal that's available for any number of uses, potentially outside of livestock feed.
It was my understanding earlier that one of your desires was to have a more robust cattle feeding business in North Dakota, so that you could have more of a market for soybean meal and also have more of a possibility of development of biodiesel. Is that right? And what does one do to bring that about?
That's a good question. I think if we knew the answer to it, it would be happening. It's just really hard to get it all pulled together to make an entire system like that work well. And that's where we struggle right now.
We advocate on the public policy side from the standpoint of working with poultry industry or the hog industry, which is not prevalent in this state. It's hard to develop that for whatever reason, although we are seeing some potential increase in the hog industry in northeastern North Dakota. But
where does your competition come from in terms of, you mentioned how the production is exported. Who are the competing soybean growers in terms of what other countries, what other states?
South America is always going to be a major factor. If they get a good crop, it directly impacts us. Where if they can oversupply the world, the price is going to take a hit. As far as other states, just about any state is in direct competition with us for export.
And you mentioned that that a lot of the beans are shipped to the West Coast for export to Asian markets. Do you have any any particular country that has more of a market share than others, or is a better customer?
That's a good question. I really don't know which country would be the highest. We have a pretty good customer base over there in a number of countries.
And food-grade soybeans, I imagine, are more in demand in Asia than they are here?
Yes.
Is that a correct assumption?
Yep.
Okay. What is the extent of the soybean research program at NDSU? Do they, frankly, when I hear about research at NDSU, ag research, I hear about weed. I hear about weed and weed and weed in terms of grains. Well, I don't hear that much about soybeans.
Well, I think most of the commodity groups, in some size, shape, or form, are involved in their specific commodity for normal test plot things involving increased both varieties and bushels, so to speak. But they're also engaged in things like weed research, disease prevention opportunities, whether that be chemical or biologically based, and it runs a gamut. I think the last time I saw the proposals for the Soybean Council, for example, for research money, there must have been 50 different kinds of proposals, and they probably fund half of that in some size, shape, or form. The advantage to a lot of those research dollars that come out of the checkoff money, for example, they're untethered, so to speak, so that they are available for matching grants and multiplying factors and that sort of effort.
You mentioned a lot of research projects, 50 research projects. What are some of them? What do they seek to do with a soybean? What kind of research do they seek to do?
Well, for example, one of the problems that we have in the soybean community is something called cyst nematose. It is a little worm, as I understand it, or it exists in the ground.
Cyst nematose.
Cyst nematose.
Cyst nematose.
Yep.
Can anyone here spell that? We'll spell it later.
I'm on Wikipedia. I can help you in just a second.
It's more like a joke. I'm sorry, but it's just nematose, and it's a worm.
Mrs. Lewin, my fourth grade teacher, would be disappointed in me right at the moment.
I doubt that. I think nematose. It's kind of hard to, or it's kind of unfair, frankly, to say. Okay, can you spell nematose?
2 weeks ago, I couldn't say it.
Yeah. Can you spell supercalifragilisticexpialidocious?
At any rate, what that does is it attacks the root system. So what's visible above the ground can look pretty healthy. It just doesn't have any pods with beans in it.
Oh, my goodness.
So the reality is you can go most of the way through the growing season and not realize that you have the problem. Mm-hmm. It is something that has migrated from south to north into North Dakota as the soybean business expands. So
I believe Mr. Olson has successfully spelled nematose.
I don't know for sure yet, but that's how
he made the good college try at it, I'm sure.
He's probably as close as we're going to get.
Yeah. Here's what Wikipedia says. 85% of the world's soybean crop is processed into soybean meal and vegetable oil. Had nothing to do with your spelling. Mm-hmm. But soybeans can be broadly classified as a vegetable in a garden or field types. Vegetable types could easily have a mild.
Come on, you're avoiding the question here. How do you spell nematose?
Wikipedia does not do a good job.
Don't worry about that. Gentlemen, tell me about how the Soybean Growers Association functions. You obviously have a board of directors. How do you elect your representatives to that board?
What we do is we've got a nominating committee that will go out into an area where we know we need another director or a new director, and we'll try to find somebody that has expressed an interest in working in the soybean industry. Typically what we do is we go to the Soybean Council, and they keep a list of county representatives for their board, and what we'll do is we'll contact some of those county reps to see if they have an interest in serving on our board. Our board is made up of 15 individuals. We're more or less all farmers. One program that we've had a lot of success with is the DuPont Young Leader Program. That's sponsored by DuPont Pioneer, and what they do is it's a competitive process where young farmers will apply, and if they're selected, they'll go down to Johnston, Iowa for a short week of training and media training and activism, those types of things. And then the second part of it is always held in conjunction with the Commodity Classic, which is our national organization annual meeting, and they'll go through more intense training at that point. And then once they complete their training, we bring them onto our board for a year with the hope that they'll continue on and be an advocate for us.
And what is this training about? Mr. Olson, what kind of training did you get?
Well, actually, I never did do it. Jason actually has been on it, so.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, what kind of, Mr. Mewes, what kind of training are we talking about? Because I have this vision of you doing push-ups.
Oh, no, nothing like that. It's been a little while since I went through it, but what they focus on is understanding your personality, understanding your neighbor's personality, and how you need to work those together to actively work together. And then another thing they really focus on is media training, where, I never knew it at that time that I'd be sitting here 5 years later talking to you, but that program helped me along getting to this point.
Well, that's great. We've been speaking this evening to Mr. Craig Olson, who's a board member of the North Dakota Soybean Growers Association, and the board president, who is the gentleman you just heard speaking. His name is Jason Mewes. He's from Colgate. Mr. Olson is from Colfax in Richland County. And we have Mr. Scott Rising, the legislative director of the North Dakota Soybean Growers Association. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. It's been very informative. I've learned a lot about soybeans.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers.
Thank you, Dale. Thanks.
We want to thank the North Dakota Soybean Growers Association for sponsoring this segment this evening. It's been a very informative segment. And we'll be back here next Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 p.m., and Saturday, 10 to noon on KFYR. Listen to the Legislative Report with your host, Dale Wetzel. This is Gary Eminent, filling in for Scott Hennon.
No, you're not filling in for Scott Hennon. You're just here.
I'm sitting in his
and
chair.
when Scott Hennon is here.
The Legislature today is brought to you in part by